Hi, Tracy Hugelmeyer here from VintagepreneurUniversity.com, where I help vintage sellers start, grow, and scale their business on Etsy. I also own my own vintage business, Rustic Eye, that I've had on Etsy since 2013. And this is part 5 of a branding mini-series. And today we're going to talk all about picking a font for your brand. If you'd like to catch up on the rest of the series, I'm going to link to it below for you in the notes. But in this series, I go over things like why branding is important for your vintage business. And I also touch on making a logo, your copy and your tone, and your color. So check out the rest of the series to get a big picture overview of branding and all the things that you can do. Today, we're just talking about one of those things, which is picking a font. And this is definitely one not to get stuck on or caught up on. And like everything else with branding, sometimes it's hard to see when you have an Etsy vintage shop how having branding is going to help you at all. After all, Etsy has, their own fonts that they use on the site. And you're right, they do. There's some things that you can't change. You cannot change it to your font unless you have, a pattern shop. But you can still use your fonts in different places strategically throughout your shop and then also off of Etsy as well. So let's talk about that. Okay, so where can you incorporate your fonts? You can incorporate them in your banner. You can make additional photos. Anytime you are putting text into a photo, you can use your fonts. You can have some type of graphic in your about section. Anytime you're making any graphic, you can put your fonts in there as well. You can also use your fonts, off of Etsy all over the place on social media. If you send out an email, whether your email provider allows you to use a particular font, or if you're making a graphic that you're putting in the email. If not, I use ConvertKit, and they're very specific about, what font you can use as the body of the email. And that's okay. I still incorporate other parts of my branding into photos and things like that I put inside the emails. Other places that you can use your fonts are on your business card, anything that you tuck into your packages. So are a lot of opportunities for fonts. And if you ever have any type of an outside website that it would also apply, you'd be wanting to use your branded fonts. So how do you pick a font? I do recommend using a basic font, nothing super fancy or artsy looking. It might look good in the beginning, but you'll probably end up regretting it later for a few reasons. One, it'll be harder to find in the different tools that you use if you're not able to upload your own font. For example, in Canva, which is one of my favorite tools of all time, you can upload your own fonts, but only if you pay for the Canva Pro service. So if you're just using their basic free service, which is great for so many things, you won't be able to use your branded font if it's not like a simple font that Canva offers as their basic font. So, you might want to go to Canva and look at what they have and pick something from there if you're going to be using Canva a lot. And if you're brand new and you don't know where to get started, because Canva has a lot of design elements in it that, you can look at and decide if that looks good for your brand. The other thing that you might want to use is Google Fonts, and I'll link to both of these below for you so that Google Fonts, if it's on Google Fonts, most likely it's a pretty well used font, and so it won't be all that difficult to find in the different, tools that you use. The other reason that you don't want to pick a real complicated font is because it might be harder for some people to read, and it'll probably be harder to design with. Now, when you're picking your branded fonts, you usually want to pick 2 to 3. So you're going to have your header font, your body font, that's your pretty much the font you put everywhere in your paragraphs and things like that when you have the opportunity. And then you can have a fancy font on top of that as your third font. Maybe it's when you put like the font, for example, that I use in this series that shows, the series number. It's a more fancy of a font to kind of capture someone's attention in a design, but it's an accent font. So that would be your third font. And if you want a fancy font, that's where you're going to fit that into your fancy font, into your accent font. Okay. Okay, so I wanted to show you really quickly. I'm on Canva right now, so I can show you some fonts that I'm working with and what that looks like. And you can see that this font here is what I was telling you about, my fancy font. It's my accent font. And I use it very sparingly, but you can see it's a much fancier type of font. And the rest of these fonts, believe it or not, are actually the same font. They're just spaced out differently, mixed cap and not cap so that there's some variation to it, but it's all the same font type. So you don't have to have 3 fonts. You can have more or less depending on your needs, but that's just a general guideline if you don't know where to get started. All right, so that's it for today for fonts. And like everything else, or like a lot of things that I repeat often, don't get hung up on this. Make a decision and move forward. Don't let it stand in your way of getting started or moving forward. It's better to just get started. You can always tweak things later. Pretty much nothing is set in stone. It's how we all learn anyway. We learn by doing and experiencing, and things like this can help us make those initial decisions, but eventually we're going to make our decisions based on what's working, what's not working, and tweak accordingly. Okay. To check out the rest of this series, make sure that you click the link below so that you can do that. If you liked this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel so that you always get notified whenever a new video is coming out. Click the bell to get those notifications. And I also have a free training that goes into branding a little bit more. You can check that out at vintagepreneuruniversity.com/free training, and I'll link to that below for you as well. Thanks so much for joining me today, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.